Good afternoon and welcome to the first concurrent session of the day, promoting mental and physical health in any discipline. Our presenter today is Joab Corey, faculty member at University of California, Riverside. If you have any questions for the presenter during the session, please feel free to enter those into the Q&A section at the bottom of the Zoom room screen, and we will address them at the end of the talk. On that note, I will hand it over to our presenter.
Hi, welcome everybody. I'm reporting to you from not so sunny California, as it's been raining here for quite a few days. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you all, and let's get started. So if you are here in this session and you have signed up for this promoting mental and physical health in any discipline, then you might be like me in that you're really kind of supportive of students, not just their ability to succeed in your class, but also just them in general as a person, right? You want to see them grow and develop. So my name is Joab Corey. I am an associate professor of teaching in economics here at UC Riverside. And being a professor of teaching just means that I am focused more on the teaching side of things than on the research side of things. So teaching is kind of my number one interest, and it's why I love to do presentations and conferences like this. In addition to teaching economics during the day, I also coach the UC Riverside boxing team in the evenings, about 2 to 3 evenings a week. And then once a quarter, an academic quarter, they do a scuba class here at UC Riverside, which I also help teach as a volunteer dive master. So for me, I love teaching no matter what it is, right? Whether it's economics, boxing, scuba diving, or anything else, right? So with that in mind, whenever I do a teaching conference like this, it is my goal, right, to always get at least one thing out of that conference that I can use to make me a better teacher or to improve my class. And so with that in mind, I always try to design my presentations for these types of conferences to do the same thing, to give you at least one thing that you can do pretty much right away that will hopefully help improve your classes, no matter what you teach, right? So with that in mind, let's get into this idea of promoting mental and physical health. Right. So here's some reasons why we should care about mental and physical health right now. So according to some recent studies, right, during the 2020-2021 school year, more than 60% of college students met the criteria for at least one mental health problem, according to this Healthy Mind study, which collected data from 373 campuses nationwide. So we know that mental health is a growing concern, particularly among college students, particularly during and post pandemic. Now, in another national survey, almost 3/4 of students reported moderate or severe psychological distress, right? So again, that's something that could certainly impact their performance in your classroom. And then finally, young people ages 18 to 22 are significantly more likely to be considered lonely now than any other generation in the United States, which I know kind of seems weird because you think these young people constantly have these friend and group networks, right? Oh, they're maybe always on their phone, texting somebody or posting something, right? But when asked if they are feeling lonely, right, they're more likely to report yes, right? Now, from the physical health side of things, right, there was a reduction in physical activity during the pandemic, right? As it turns out, walking to and from and between classes was an important part of the physical activity levels of most college students, right? So that walking or moderate, vigorous, and total physical activity levels were reduced during the COVID-19 pandemic confinements in university students from different countries, right? And then research indicates that most college students are not meeting just basic physical activity guidelines, right? So these are just some things to think about as we start to maybe care more about our students, not only inside the classroom, but maybe their well-being outside the classroom as well, right? So I was recently part of a book club that was reading this book, What Inclusive Instructors Do, Principles and Practices for Excellence in College Teaching. And I was a little surprised to learn that in a sample of 765 college students, 22% of respondents heard about on-campus mental health services from their instructors. So about 1/5, a little bit more than 1/5 of students who are accessing mental health services, right, are hearing about those from their instructor more so than from any other university resource, right? So with that in mind, you may want to consider including some information about these support services that your campus offers on your syllabus and or on your course site homepage. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing for a second, just so I can share with you my course site homepage, and you can kind of see what that's going to look like. So here is kind of a preview of my Canvas course site. So when students log in, they see this homepage with an announcement up top here, right? And then again, if they scroll on down, they're going to see the syllabus. They're going to see a link to my student hours because I offer them both in person and through Zoom since the pandemic, right? A link to their Discord site where they can use to chat with one another, right? I also have a video or a link here to a page that includes just a bunch of positive and inspirational messages and videos, right? Technical support and student opportunities for any kind of internships or volunteer opportunities that come their way, right? But when it comes to student resources, here's what I wanted to show everybody. So if I click on that, right, then again, I have all the resources for students that this university offers, right, including student health services, the Student Disability Resource Center, the Title IX office, student support services, campus health and wellness, counseling and psychological services. And then I always give them both on the syllabus and here my email and my cell phone number. Now, a lot of teachers are a little surprised that I give out my cell phone number, especially when they learn that I teach about 570 students in each class. I've got 2 of those classes this quarter. So I got like 1,140 students. And they're like, aren't you worried about your students constantly calling and texting you? And to be honest, it happens very rarely. So I kind of announce this in class. I also tell my students in the syllabus that, you know, the first means of communication is just to either come to my office for the student hours or to email me, right? And then I'll be happy to reply to that email and talk to them in my office. But I also have that Zoom session set up so that they can come and see me that way if they can't physically come to my office. And then I tell them that if you have to reach me outside of student hours and you want a back and forth conversation, that's when you call me on my cell phone. I tell them, please never to text me, right? Because anything that you can text me and that I can respond with a text, I can do the same thing with an email, and I can always type a lot faster than I can text. So I just tell them that if you email me, I'll get back to you a lot faster than if you text me. But if you want to have a good back and forth conversation, to call me on my cell phone. And again, I maybe get 3 or 4 calls in emergency situations every quarter among those 1,100 students that I teach. So it's really not that big of a deal, right? In terms of them just like constantly bugging me. I think it makes them feel a little bit more secure, like I'm kind of in their corner. So again, right, this is something that you might want to do, and it's something that you can do pretty quickly in your class, like right away. Include these types of a page that includes these types of services, right? So again, the students who might need that kind of extra support or psychological counseling during that quarter, or I can find it pretty easily because we just learned about 1/5 of students who use this stuff find out about it from their instructor. So, you know, maybe you might want to be one of those instructors who kind of has these resources available, you know, in your class, right? Another thing I want to mention is you might have saw this on my homepage. I always call my office hours student hours. That's actually something else I learned from that inclusivity book is that if you teach a lot of students who are first in their generation to go to college, right, or first in their families to go to college, then again, then might not know what office hours mean. They might think that's a time for them to not bug you because you're in your office working, right? Whereas if you call them student hours, it kind of resonates with them that that's time for them as students to come see you, right? So again, those are just a couple hints that you can incorporate right away. Make your class a little bit more welcoming and a little bit more friendly, and hopefully it maybe helps out some students in distress. Right. Now, with that in mind, I'm going to go back to the slides here and continue on. So one thing that I learned doing some research on kind of what improves cognition is that 3 cognitive enhancements that have been well tested to improve students' cognitive function are exercise, meditation, and some computer games. So this was some research put together in a book, Learning Center Teaching, putting the research on learning into practice by Professor Doyle. All right, so with that in mind, I'm going to again have you check out my virtual break room that I include in each one of my learning modules. And to do that, we got to go back to my Canvas course site here. So again, I'm going to share my screen with you again. All right. So again, this is the homepage that students see, but when they really want to start going through the assignments, right, they're going to click on modules, right? So they click on modules. I have an introductory module here that includes a course overview, a syllabus, a what I call a goals contract. This is where students tell me what their goals are for the quarter, right? What their perceived obstacles they might encounter in overcoming and reaching those goals, and then their plan for overcoming those obstacles. Right? I do the same thing. I provide a goals contract for them where I tell them, here are my goals for this class this quarter. Here are some obstacles I perceive in reaching those goals. And then here are some ways I'm going to help overcome those obstacles. So I put my goals contract in there. And then I have them fill out their own goals contract as part of this online class rules and academic honesty survey, which is just a syllabus survey that they get 1 extra credit point for completing, right? I also have kind of a welcome video. Now, once they're done with all the module 0 stuff, right, and introduce themselves, then we get into the material for chapter 1. And the very last thing that I have in the each module is what I call my virtual break room. So each virtual break room, and I have one for each learning module, has an exercise break, a relaxation break, its own unique individual intellectual break, which is a virtual escape room, which I'm going to talk to you a little bit about as part of this presentation, and then a social break. Right, so get a way for them to connect with each other through what I call the Good Vibes discussion board. And the Good Vibes discussion board is just that. It's a way for students to interact with each other positively by, again, sharing these, what I call good vibes. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about each one of these. So this is actually fairly easy to create, at least most of it. Right? Like with the exercise break, I just went on YouTube and with the content creator's permission, I use the link to the short exercise challenges that I think is good for students, especially if they're doing this class online. So I teach both online and in person. My course site really looks the same no matter how I teach it. The only difference is when I teach in person, I'm also there in person teaching on the days of the class, right? But when I'm online, I'm just, again, holding that class through Zoom. But either way, all these materials that I have up there are pretty much the same. But if they're taking this class, say online, they might be suffering from some of that Zoom fatigue or some of that screen fatigue, and they just need to get up and move around for a little bit. And as we know, the exercise can improve cognition, and taking these short breaks every once in a while can kind of help them, kind of refocus when it comes time to learning the material. So the first one of these is the Baby Shark Ab Challenge. Those of you who don't have kids, you might not be familiar with the song Baby Shark. Those of you who do have kids, you're probably well familiar with that song, right? But again, it goes from baby to mama to daddy to grandma to grandpa. And for each shark that changes, there's going to be a change in that level of core activity. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and give you a short taste of the Baby Shark Ab Challenge. If you want, you can kind of get on the floor and do it along with it. We're not going to do the whole video, right? But at least the first 30 seconds, right? If you don't feel so inclined to move, maybe just check it out and see what my students do when they do this exercise break. So we go ahead and start this video now.
Baby shark, baby shark, baby shark. Mommy shark, mommy shark, mommy shark, mommy shark. Daddy shark, daddy shark.
All right, so that's enough of that. I think just looking at it probably wears a few people out, right? But in any case, I always give credit to whoever uploaded or created that content here as well. All right, now us for each exercise challenge, right, there is a section that I call Pass the Prof, where basically it's my performance on the exercise challenge or what I do when I do this challenge. And again, it's their kind of, they can make it their goal to do more than me, right? So for example, this is a minute and a half of core work, right? I do that 3 consecutive times with no more than 15 seconds between each break. I also give them a monthly challenge, say, hey, if you want to take the Baby Shark Ab Challenge as it's originally intended, you're going to try to do this workout once a day for 30 straight days, right? And again, I've had students reported that they've done it. And again, it's kind of helped put them on a path towards maybe more physical activity and greater physical health, right? Now, each one of these virtual break rooms also has a relaxation break, which is usually like a guided meditation or a breathing exercise, right? Because we know that, again, meditation is one of those activities that improves cognition. And we all know that, or a lot of people are becoming familiar with the idea that taking a break to meditate or engage in some kind of breathing exercise is, again, not only good for preventing that Zoom or screen fatigue, but it's also just good for your physical health, right? So with that in mind, we're not necessarily going to watch any of that video, but it's just a slow guided meditation from a yoga instructor, right? Now, one of the stars of the show is the intellectual break, which is the virtual escape room. And this is something that takes a little bit more time to create. And I have created these, one for each of my virtual break rooms here, right? So this is something that you might not be able to do like right away in your class, You might have to take a spring break or a summer to start putting some of these together, right? But I'm going to show you what my virtual escape room looks like and kind of how I created it. And then I'm going to give you a link for a website that you can go to that gives you all kinds of tips and materials that you can use to create your own, should you feel so inclined, right? So with that in mind, right, if I click on the virtual escape room link, right, it's going to take me to that virtual escape room, right? And with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen here and share on the actual escape room itself to make sure that we can all see it. Right. And if you go to view, right, you're going to go to this view called slideshow here. Right. Now, this just looks like a regular Google slide with a picture in it, and it is, but it's also got a bunch of other pictures embedded. And each one of these pictures that's been embedded has been linked to another Google slide that has a clue, right? So the first thing that students want to do is they click on the lock here, and it is going to open up a bunch of virtual locks, right? So you can see there's going to be a 8-letter word lock, and for each one, I always give them the formatting. So all lowercase letters, no spaces, and then an example, right? So this isn't the answer to the question, but example, the formatting to the answer, right? And then there's a 3-digit number lock with a decimal. Again, give them an example of the format, right? Here's a 5-digit number lock, 4-letter lock, and a 4-digit number lock, right? That they can go through and again, try to solve these different clues, right? So looking at the virtual escape room here, right? For example, if they were to click on this bulletin board, boom, this clue pops up. What is economics? And it says here, economics, aside from being really cool, is the study of how people make choices under, and they need to be able to fill in that blank. Now, if they have gone to the first day of classes, then we've gone over this definition. They should know what this definition is. But interestingly enough, even if they missed that first day of classes, they could still get that answer if they're observant enough. Notice that there are some of these letters that are bolded. SCARCITY spells out scarcity. And that's what economics is. It's the study of how people make choices under scarcity. So if we go to our series of locks here, if they were to enter scarcity, right, then again, they would have gotten this one right. If they were to enter something else, say economics is the study of how people make choices with money, right, then not only would it tell them that they're wrong, but I have built in here a hint about, again, go back to that definition of economics and why we have to study it, right? So again, we can enter in that right word, and it'll give us the right, it'll tell us that we kind of got the right answer here, right? And again, if you want to take a look at some of what these other clues look like, right? If you were to click on this slide here, right, then again, it's got a problem here, calculate the marginal cost of those fries. And again, this is similar to an example that we did in class. They should be able to do that kind of calculation, right? And then if they're to go over here to, like, again, this TV monitor, right, they're going to see, again, this idea of politicians frequently come on television and make all sorts of statements. I want them to be able to identify whether these statements are positive and normative, and they can use that to answer these clues. So I went ahead and worked out these clues in advance so that you wouldn't have to kind of see us struggle through them, right? And I want you to see what happens if they get them all right. So again, these are them entering in these clues here or entering these combinations to unlock these doors. And if they do that, right, and get them all right, if they click next, then they get this digital virtual escape room badge saying that they escaped, right? So again, they can send me that badge if they want to prove that they escaped. And I always say, try to time yourself and see how long it takes you to get out of this room. And you can even work in groups of 4 to do so, right? Now, it's important to note that everything in this virtual break room right now is optional. They aren't required to do any of it, but this is just a fun way for them to take a break. The reason why I haven't required any of this yet is because it's still relatively new. Anytime I do something new, I make it optional at first, kind of make sure all the bugs get worked out, and then I might start requiring it later, right? So with that in mind, that's kind of what that virtual break room looks like. Now, again, I'm going to reshare my screen here back on the, before I do that, let me actually go back to this digital escape room badge. I want to point out that this is one of those resources that is provided to you by that website that I'm going to share with you on how to create these virtual escape rooms, right? So with that in mind, if you're thinking, how does he create this digital escape room badge? I didn't. I got it from that website, and you will be able to if you decide to use it, right? So one last thing is that each of these virtual break rooms also does have what I call a social break, or that good vibes discussion board. This is where I tell students, again, they're not required to make or respond to a post, but feel free to post anything they want from module 1, including lecture videos, any questions they have from the lecture video, right? They can include their score from the exercise challenge. They can include their time from the virtual escape room and challenge other people to beat that time, or even request hints if they're stuck there, right? Any personal stories or examples that relate to the material. All I ask is that they're polite and respectful. Again, only good vibes are allowed. And again, I tell them, now I'm not going to be monitoring this discussion board too much, but I will be checking in from time to time to make sure that all posts are courteous and that there's no instances of cyberbullying. So just have fun with it, right? So again, if we go to modules, right, you can see if you want to go to my second learning module, if you go into that virtual break room, you're going to see, again, a whole new exercise challenge. This one is the 200 squat workout, right? Again, I went through and did the workout and posted my time there if people want to try to beat it, right? There is a new relaxation break, right? Again, a new relaxation video right there. And then a new virtual escape room, which if, again, we were to click on that, right? This one is court themed because in chapter 2, I go over a bunch of legal stuff, right? Laws and property rights and stuff like that. So again, each one of these has its own theme to it. And if you go into, again, the virtual lock here, you're going to see that there's always a story. So this story is you're working as an intern for a prestigious law firm, and you're asked to stay in the courtroom and sort out the remaining work for the firm's teams of lawyers. Right, you're told that you're not allowed to leave until it's finished. It's now up to you to click around the room and use the concepts you learned in chapter 2 to finish the work so you can go home. Will you get to go home early and watch your favorite shows on Netflix? Will you be pulling an all-nighter? It's up to you. Right. So for each one, you might want to come up with like a clever or interesting story. Right. So I know one of the biggest questions I get before we turn it over to questions is, how is this received by students? Right. Seems like a lot of work. Is that worth it? Right, so let's kind of go through some of my student feedback that I've gotten through this over the last few classes that I've done this for. Right. So about before we get to that feedback, here is the link to the website. Right. So this website here is it's called Ditch That Textbook, and they provide 40 free digital escape rooms for you to kind of try out on your own, see how they work, plus a step-by-step guide for creating your own escape room. Now, I have no affiliation with this website. Like I don't run it. I don't make any money off of it. I just happen to use it. There is a fee for that subscription that'll give you all these resources, but it's just a one-time $19 fee, right? And it gives you access to a lot of pre-formatted materials, like access to pre-formatted locks, access to different images and stuff like that you can include, like a map if you want to use like a directional lock, where students have to enter north, south, east, west, and of course get a link or a access to that escape room badge, that digital badge that students can get. So again, I think it's well worth it. For one-time $19 fee, it cuts down on like hours of work. Right. Now, every year, and this is something I recommend that all professors do. Again, if you can come away with this with at least one recommendation to improve your class, then I'll be happy. So one thing that I do is always do a midterm teacher evaluation. And I always tell my students, I word it like this, is like at the end of the quarter, right, you fill out a teacher evaluation that the university looks at and they use to evaluate what kind of job I did teaching on this quarter. And I get to see that evaluation. I get to see your comments, but I don't get to see them until like a week after the class is over and all the grades are turned in, which means I can't use your comments to teach you all better. I can only use your comments to teach the next class better, which you may or may not be in, right? So I think it makes a lot more sense for me to use your comments to teach you better. So I always do this midterm teacher evaluation. We're about halfway or 5 weeks into our 10-week quarter here, right? I ask students to kind of evaluate the class, right? And I ask them 4 main questions, right? I ask them, what is your least favorite part of the class? What is your favorite part of the class? What recommendations do you have to improve the class? And if there's one thing about this class that you could change, what would it be? And since I started doing this virtual break room, I've added this 5th question in, which says, for this class, I have added a virtual break room to each module that contains this exercise challenge, a relaxation break, a virtual escape room that corresponds to the information in each module, and a discussion board. Have you explored the optional module break rooms yet? And if so, what was your favorite part? And if not, why not? And then I also put as part of this question, do you like having a virtual break room available, or do you feel like it just clutters up the module in an already busy class? So I'm kind of letting them know it's okay if you tell me that you don't like it or that you don't think it does any good, right? Because I want students to be as honest as possible about their feedback with regards to this. So let's talk about what some of the responses are to this midterm teacher evaluation question. Right. So let's go over the good, the bad, and the eh. So here's one of the here's that slide that talks a little bit more about the positive or good responses. So here is a quote from a student says, I've explored the virtual break rooms and I like the exercise break as a welcomed addition to the module. They're always placed at the end of the module, making it hard for anyone to confuse them with any assignments that we have for the week. So saying that doesn't really clutter up the module, right? We get through all the assignments and everything like that. And at the end, if we want to do this break room, we can. Another student says the relaxation breaks, escape rooms, and exercise challenges are a good mood booster, especially when I'm feeling overwhelmed. Some students said having a virtual break is very important because learning for hours without breaks can be very draining and makes it harder to focus. And then another student wrote, I have looked through these virtual break rooms and I thought that this was really nice and it should be something that all professors implement into online learning platforms. Kind of gives students a safe space to relax, take a breather. I have another series of positive responses here with some specific call outs about their favorite parts of the room. So one student says, I usually just watch the relaxation break videos. I have not explored the other activities because I mostly find interest in those relaxation videos. Another student says that they haven't enjoyed the relaxation breaks. I like having the option available for when I need to take a break. Another student says, I have used the exercise challenge since I'm an athlete here. I want to try it out and it's pretty fun. Yes, I like having a virtual break and it's very helpful to just not think about schoolwork. Another student says, I've checked out the Try Not to Laugh challenge video. I think that's in my Module 5 virtual break room. And I found that to be very entertaining. And at the same time, I get to do some exercises along with the video to take a break from sitting in front of the computer. Another student said, I have done the escape room and it was fun. They're study games and I enjoy them. Another student says that I think it helps because sometimes all of us need a little mood boost. And so it can be fun to have a discussion board where people just talk about whatever they want. And then here are some of the more kind of negative responses. And they're not incredibly negative, but they're kind of indicating that maybe they aren't all positive. Right. And so he says, I have not explored the module. I feel timid to explore it. The virtual break room is new to me, and I've never heard of anything like this. And then another student writes, I feel like this gives me a little more anxiety because of the way that I approach the modules. If the module block is longer, then I feel a little more overwhelmed. And if it's shorter, I feel like the module is more doable. Right. So I know that this work isn't any more or less, right? Because again, they're optional. But in terms of mental preparation, the placebo effect, seeing shorter module just makes me happier, right? So yeah, they're looking at the step-by-step list of the modules, right? This does add another step at the end, even though it is an optional one. And that by itself might give some students some anxiety. So that's something to think about as well. Another student says that they do feel like it just clutters up the module in an already busy class. And then one student said, I tried the first break room from the first module. And it feels like an interesting and unique material to add into the class. Although it does clutter up the module a bit, I think it's a nice addition. Perhaps instead of including the break room inside each module, make a separate section in the modules tab for just break rooms, right? So the student says, rather than having at the end of each learning module, maybe have a separate module for just break rooms and then tell students that they can go there. I've thought about doing that. I haven't undergone that suggestion yet, just because I kind of like the idea of having it in each module since it is tied a little bit to that module, right? Otherwise, again, I just don't think students are going to find it at all or even look for it. Right, but I don't know, maybe I'll try that for a summer class and see if it makes a difference. Again, when we're taking a look at some of these selected responses, these are kind of the responses, and that they're not good, they're not bad. Right? These are from students who mostly haven't tried out the break room yet, but they kind of like the idea of it, maybe hope to try it out in the future. So this student wrote, I love the idea of having a virtual break room set up. However, I haven't used it yet because I haven't had much downtime. I like the idea that it's available. Another student says that I have not used it yet because I was unsure of what it was. I really like that we have the option, and it's just a fun addition to the class. Just having this kind of thing included kind of makes the class feel more inviting. Another student wrote, I have not checked it out yet, but I feel like I definitely should check it out though. I feel like just having it available is good. And then finally, a student said, I haven't used the break rooms yet because I haven't felt the need to, but I think it's a really cool option to include, and it makes me feel that the professor cares about his students. And I think that's really important because one thing that I heard, one of my very first ever pieces of teaching advice was that, I actually heard this from the chair of our department. He said, I get to look at all the teachers' evaluations all the time. And he was talking to us as graduate students getting ready to teach our first class. And he says, a lot of people think that if you give good grades, you're going to give good evaluations. But I've honestly seen some teachers give nothing but A's and get the absolute worst evaluations I have ever seen, right? When it comes to getting good evaluations, what really matters most is that students think that you care about them and their learning, right? That's what matters, right? The teachers who just give good grades and get horrible evaluations, it's because the students didn't perceive that the teacher cared at all about them, right? So with that in mind, it's really about just caring about your students, or at least letting your students know that you care. And when it comes to something like this virtual break room, this is a way that you can let students know that you care about them, not just their learning in your classroom, but really them as an entire person, right? Their ability to be healthy, both mentally and physically, outside the class as well, right? So we are running short of time here. We only got about a few minutes left before the Q&A starts, but I am done with my portion of the presentation. I want to thank you all for your attention. I hope that you got something out of this presentation, at least one thing that you can incorporate into your class right away. Maybe it's using a midterm teacher evaluation if you haven't used that already, right? Maybe it is including a student resources page there up on your course site, where you again give students information about where they can go if they need any kind of psychological counseling or any other student services, right? Maybe it's calling your office hours student hours from now on, right, to make them more inviting for those first generation college students. Or maybe it is including a optional break room into your class, right? That includes maybe an exercise challenge, a relaxation break, or even a digital escape room that you have learned how to create from using that website and maybe looking a little bit at mine. Right. So hopefully, again, there's at least one thing you've learned in this class that you can, or this presentation, that you can use to make your class a little bit better starting today. Right. I'll be happy to open it up for questions. I'm going to stop sharing and let's hopefully take a look at the Q&A.
Thank you. It looks like we have a question about the resources and links for finding such breakout room elements.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and upload the presentation so that you all have access to it. That has the links in there for finding that website that includes all those resources for that virtual break room, right? I'm also going to go ahead and just include the website into the chat directly as well, right? That way, again, that might be a little bit easier to find, right? Or again, more direct to find. So there's the website called Ditch That Textbook, where again, for a small $19 fee, right, you get access to pre-formatted slides, right, that are going to help you develop all those locks, access to the pre-formatted lock Google file, where again, it kind of shows you how to put in all those locks and hints and things like that. And of course, the digital escape room badge that you can get for completing the room as well. Hopefully those materials help. I'll also tell you what I'll do is I'll give you a link to the virtual break room that we looked at here for module 1. Anybody with access to the link should be able to access it. And that way, again, if you want to take a look at how I did mine and maybe work your way through it so you can see how to develop your own links or your own escape rooms, right? You can check out that link there.
The chat is disabled for participants. So if you want to provide that to me in the chat to the host, then I will be happy to post that.
Okay, I'll go ahead and make sure that you get that as well. Sorry, I didn't know that chat was disabled. All right, are there any other questions that I can answer or help out with?
Okay, looks like we got that posted into the chat. And did we have any other Q&A?
I've got one here from Carla. Says, do you utilize a similar Canvas structure for in-person classes as well, or just for your online classes? That's a good question. So basically, this Canvas structure that I utilize is the same whether I teach online or in person. And the only difference is again that when I'm teaching in person, I'm actually there during certain class times teaching physically. But when I am teaching online, right, I'm just not there physically doing it. I'm doing it through Zoom, right? But everything else is pretty much exactly the same. So I'm going to share my screen with you here again, just kind of show you what a typical module looks like. And this is the same whether it is online or whether it's in person. So for each module, if you go to the overview page, I have, first off, step one is lecture videos. Even if I'm teaching in person, I provide all of these lecture videos, including kind of a timestamp of how long it takes and the slides that students are going to be able to take notes with as they're going through those videos. We also have these discussion sections in here at UC Riverside where students meet with a TA in groups of about 30, because again, I teach a class of about 570, right? We'll also have a video associated with that discussion section and slides associated with that as well. And then they do have a required discussion session assignment. For each module, I post practice questions that I come up with, course book questions that the publisher comes up with. Right? And again, those are added there with the publisher's permission, as long as I continue to use their textbook. Right? And then for each module, I also have like a 20-minute review session video, because students are always asking for like review sessions, right? So say, here's a review session video on just the stuff from chapter 1 or module 1. And after doing all that, they have the module quiz, and then they can check out that virtual break room. Right? They click next. It's going to take them right to that first lecture video. And there I have the learning objectives that I hope that they can get out of that lecture video, right? So again, they can watch that lecture video, and as they're watching that lecture video, right, then it's going to occasionally, I'm not going to play the whole video.
Welcome all you Highlanders.
Right,
I hope you're as excited as I am to start your climb.
Occasionally come up to a question that they can answer as part of that lecture video. So you can see that question here, right? When they get to this question, they have to answer that question in order to keep on moving through that video. So these are not required, right, that they complete these, but if I'm teaching online, these are the main lectures. If I'm teaching in person, they have the option of watching this, but they can also come to my in-person lectures, right? So that's really the only difference. The class is set up exactly the same, whether I'm teaching it in person or online, but the only difference being that if I'm teaching in person, I'm available to teach in person during those regular class times too, for students who prefer in-person instruction. For students who prefer online instruction, they can always just watch these lecture videos, right? So hopefully that helps answer your question there, right? I know there's a lot there. I want to kind of make it aware that I've taught this class for about 14 years, right? I didn't do all this stuff the first time I taught it, but I've kind of added stuff like a little bit over the years to where it's gotten to be what it is today. So don't feel overwhelmed with like, oh man, there's no way I can put in all that stuff. Well, I didn't either in the beginning, right? But I started adding stuff like one at a time. I started like making those practice questions, right, for one class after teaching this a number of years. And then I started making those review session videos one semester after, again, teaching this a number of years. So each semester I try to add like one thing like that. And as I do that, right, this class just gets more and more developed, right, over time. Have you made a Canvas Commons version of your Canvas course? I'd love to use a template that is similar to this. No, I haven't yet, but if you're interested in that, I'll be happy to try to do so. My wife is actually an instructional designer at Mount San Jacinto Community College, which is also a big advantage for me. And so I'm going to ask her about how to do that because I'm not sure exactly how to do that. She probably can tell me, and I'll try to get that done right away. Yeah, thank you for that suggestion. I'll be happy to do that. Are there any other questions in the Q&A there or that somebody would like to ask? I'm happy to stick around and help out any way that I can. It doesn't have to be about this presentation. If you've got any other teaching questions, I'll be happy to help.
Okay, well, thank you so much for all the questions that have come in, and thank you so much for all the valuable information that you shared with us today. The next concurrent session will begin at 1:00 p.m. Eastern Time, and you can view the chat for session meeting room links or information on the conference website for a complete list of concurrent sessions and their descriptions. While accessing the conference website, don't forget to swing by the virtual exhibit hall to say hello to the Hawks team. While there, you can view a quick 5-minute demonstration, request your t-shirt, and be entered to win an hourly giveaway. Also, in the spirit of St. Patrick's Day, you'll find a few golden coins throughout the conference website. Click on the coins to be entered to win an additional raffle, and we will see you at the next session.
Thank you all for your attention. Appreciate it.